First of all, let me summarize this thing about this menopausal hormonal therapy. What are the evidences and the guidelines? I think most of them we have already discussed. And just to add, like we know that the current treatment options for both peri and postmenopausal, the most main important is your MHT, which contains combined estrogen and progesterones, or you can have the tribolones, or the newer ones are the SERMs. You can continue with your combined oral contraceptive pills. We have got a topical estrogens, that is the topical preparations. Non-hormonal, we have already discussed about anti-epileptics, gabapentin, pregabalin, antidepressants. Then phytoestrogens, which are the plant-derived, that is phytoestrogens, which could be black cohosh and the low dose of vitamin E. To sometimes it can also help, and the alternative therapies in the form of yogas, acupunctures, meditations. So, and if we go one by one, 33% of the females, they are current regular users of this complementary and alternative medicines. And 90% of menopausal females usually tried one or two this thing, their products, and 55% out of those, they never or they did not disclose about the use of this complementary and alternative medicines to their doctors. And most often, they are usually on their vitamins and various minerals, which are mostly commonly followed by your herbal medicines, soya products, phytoestrogens, and so on. And how nowadays, like this is how we do, like the hormonal therapy. We know that it is the most effective and definite therapy, but it is being used as a last resort by most of the clinicians. They initially they do the you do the lifestyle modification. If the person is obese, you cut down your weight. If you are smoking, you stop smoking. And the counseling is the most important part, or you start taking a lot of vitamins and the minerals. But if the lifestyle modifications fail to make any improvement in the patient, then you start with the non-hormonal treatment, which could be the isoflavonoids or the anti-anxiety medicines. And if again this fails, then you start with the hormonal therapies, which could be the estrogen tablets, gels, creams, combination of estrogen and progesterones, or tibolone and the some. This is, I think, the flow chart how we like the practice today, all whether we are endocrinologist or gynecology, rather than starting the patient rightly on the day one on the hormonal therapy. And we know that, but why we want to treat, these are the you see the objective of treatment, which has to be holistic, to improve the symptoms, to improve the quality of life, and to prevent or to minimize the far reaching consequences. And if you see the features or the symptoms which usually happen once they start crossing 40 years, between 40 to 50, they start feeling the hot flashes, because hot flashes can occur in a perimenopausal age group rather than the postmenopausal. Sweating, insomnia, menstrual irregularities, and that all leads to psychological symptoms. After they once they start they cross 50 or close to 55 till 60, then the other problems like the vaginal atrophy, and like this patient had a vulvovaginal atrophy, dyspareunia, skin atrophy, and most disturbing this the urge stress incontinence. And late after 65, then we know that the osteoporosis set in, the atherosclerosis leading to the coronary heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, and Alzheimer's disease. So the symptoms starting at the age of 40 going till you're 70, this all these things impacts the quality of the life. And as rightly Dr. Mangla said, that you have to start early, and you have to right woman, right dose, right time, and these are the most important things. So does any non-hormonal or complementary alternative therapy fulfills all the objectives of treatment? Meaning by thus it leads to effective improvement in the symptomatology, improvement in the quality of life, reduction of fractures, improving your cardiometabolic health, reducing your premature. So many things, so many questions which we have to ask if you start your the patient on the non-hormonal. I think the non-hormonal therapies are usually the symptomatic base that does not have any much of the effect on the you say on the reduction of osteoporosis or the fractures. But there are few data, there are few reports that these non-hormonal therapies, mainly the phytoestrogens, which are they are estrogenic agonists, they have they slightly improve the cardiometabolic health, because there are many reports. It has been seen that if you give a good dose of phytoestrogens, the main active ingredient in the phytoestrogen is genicity, and that decreases the level of triglycerides, visfatine, and vis and vis, they increases the level of adiponectin also. So there are a few papers from the Mauritius, that's the prevalence of complementary and alternative medicine used by menopausal females, systemic review of surveys, and the on a menopause paper, that's critical review of complementary and alternative medicine used in menopause. And what they found that there is a meta-analysis of 15 randomized controlled trials, including peri and postmenopausal females who experience menopausal symptoms treated with the oral phytoestrogens. And these meta-analysis, they found there is no significant treatment effect of phytoestrogens when we compared with the placebo. But there was a meta-analysis of approximately 10 trials. They found there is a significant reduction in the hot flashes when they compared to the placebo, and there is no side effects was not much. The phytoestrogens have got a one side effect, that is GI upset happens because of this inconclusive data. Some says they are effective, some says they are not very much effective. Hence, we say it is inconclusive to say that they are highly effective. And so to conclude, the phytoestrogens which are available as soya products, soya foods, red clover extracts, they do not improve hot flashes and other menopausal therapy. So this was a conclusion which came back in 2004 also for the treatment of menopausal symptoms. But there are few trials after that, they said it could be effective. That is the reason that 2017 North American Menopausal Society, they said they can be used with the safety because they did not have much of side effects. So now let's consider about the other guidelines, that is 2016 IMS recommendations, menopausal diagnosis and management, the NICE guidelines which were published in 2015, and in the 2017 there were hormonal therapy position statement of the North America Menopausal Society, and recently in 2020 we have got a guidelines from the Indian Menopausal Society. So why there is a so much of you say hawks and cry about why not to use this? This was basically looking into the cancer incidence perspective in patients who were put on the MST. If you see the 23 cases of the breast cancers per 1,000 females diagnosed between the age of 50 to 59 years in the UK, if you start with the MHT, you will add just four more cases to those of 23. If only estrogen is being used as a MHT, you will have four lesser cases as compared to your you send the 23 cases. But if patient is obese, BMI is more than 30, and patient is not on any medicine, and there are like you but the you send the incidence, if you see the 24 more cases will be there. So it is obesity is the main triggering factor for causation of the breast cancer rather than the MHT. If you go further down, if they take drink 2 or more units of alcohol per day, 5 more cases. Combined hormonal contraceptives, just 4 more cases as compared to the normal one. So risk of breast cancer is not the same with the all MHTs. Do MHT causes significant risk of CA breast? This was the analysis by the various societies in 2016 by IMS, 2017 by the North American Menopausal Society, NICE guidelines, and ACE in 2017. They say the risk is very small, and the per annum risk is just 0.1%. And estrogen alone does not initiate or promote the risk of the breast carcinoma. Now, the another thing is, does progesterone matter? Yes, progesterone does matter. Risk primarily is associated with the synthetic progesterone, which you give the medroxyprogesterone acetate. And more potent progesterogens, such as MPA, may have a more adverse effect. Yes, EPT can be associated with the increase in the risk of breast carcinoma. So, going further, which progesterone is safer? Nowadays, we are using the micronized progesterone, or the, as Dr. Umesh in previous form, she said about the use of the dydrogesterone. These two progesterones, they are safe they have got a very minimal risk of inducing the breast carcinoma. Now, the route through which whether would you like to give the oral estrogen or would you like to give the transdermal estrogen less likely to produce venous thromboembolism, stroke, and CAD. Similarly, is VTE risk is high with MHT. It is less frequent among Asians and non-obese with the age of less than 60 years. And the age 2017, they say there is an increased risk with the higher age if the BMI is more than 30 with the positive family history. So, which MHT is safer? Transdermal estrogens are safe, though cost is the major issues. Transdermal estrogens, they being safe by all the guidelines. So, the risk may be lower with a transdermal MHT containing natural progesterones like dydrogesterone or the micronized progesterone. So these were the how to individualize and the recommendations from all guidelines if the age is less than 40 years or what we call as a POI or the premature ovarian insufficiency. MHT is mandatory on the day one, and for how long? Till natural age of menopause. If age is between 40 to 50 years, benefits exceed the risk. If between 50 to 60 years, benefit exceed risk. If it is less than 10 years of menopause, after 60 years, it is a red zone, risks can be more. So, unanimously, MHT remains the most effective therapy for urogenital atrophy as well as for the hot flashes, according to most of the guidelines. And you can divide into the three parts: hormonal therapy, that is the MHT; non hormonal therapy, only when MHT is contraindicated in the form of antidepressants or anti-epileptics, or you can start with the complementary and alternative therapies, which usually lack the data. If you go with the MHT, if the uterus is not there, then continuous estrogen has to be given. There is no tablet break or no bleeding as there is no uterus. If uterus is present, we have to go for the cyclic HRT. Then we have got three options. You can continue the estrogen for 21 days and you can add the progesterone from the day 7 till 21 days and 7-day tablet break, what we call as a sequential therapy, or the regular bleeding will be there at the end of the cycle. If it is a continuous sequential HRT, continuous sequential means you have to give along with the like calendar from the day 1 till 28 is your estrogen, and you add the progesterone from the day 14. That is, there will be sequential therapy without tablet break, and there will be regular bleeding at the end of the cycle. Or you can use the continuous combined HRT, in which both estrogen and progesterone has to be given right from the day 1 till day 28. The route could be either oral or transdermal. This therapy, but we called as a combined therapy without tablet break, and there will be no bleeding at the end of the cycle. As Madam has rightly told, we know that there is a superiority of 17 beta estradiol, which was not initially available. Now it is available in India over the other estrogens, just because the 17 beta estradiol is chemically and biologically identical to the endogenous human estradiol, hence rapidly available after ingestion and leading to the minimal viral load. Because but there is another one, the estradiol valeriate. It has got a high viral load, and the conjugate equine estrogen, which was used previously, nowadays we don't use much because it has got a more of prothrombic effect, which is related to the high level of estrogen in the liver because of its high first pass hepatic effect that leads to increased risk of venous thromboembolism and stroke. And hence, we use the 17 beta estradiol as a MHT therapy. Yes, among the various progestogens, if you compare, we usually do the dihydrogesterone because though it has got a progestigenic activity, but does not have any estrogenic, androgenic, and there is no glucocorticoid activity, and there is a plus minus anti-androgenic and anti-mineralocorticoid activity. So the synthetic progesterones, they have got a high increased risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and breast cancer in comparison with the natural progesterones, which are dihydrogesterone and the micronized progesterone. And there are a number of studies, the large European observational data, they have shown that micronized progesterone or dihydrogesterone may be associated with lower risk of breast cancer than the synthetic ones. So So benefits, it reduces the vasomotor symptoms, genitourinary system, and we have got a data that it reduces the osteoporosis and the risk of fractures. Even it has got we have a data that it improves the osteoarthritis. There is a reduced CVD risk if it is used in the less than 60 years. Reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes, abdominal obesity, helps in prevention. It prevents the cognitive impairment and reduces the neovascular macular lesions. But what are the risks which we have to look for? Stroke, venous thrombolism, CA breast, and CVD happens only in those patients if the age is more than 60 years. But these risk factors, they got minimized if you use the micronized progesterone or the dydrogesterone, because these risks happen with MHT only with the synthetic progesterones. So before you start any patient on MHT, there is a big list of contraindications which you should look into, because if you see, then if your patient encountered with any of this, we should not start with the MHT, like current or past history of breast cancers, estrogen sensitive benign or malignant conditions, undiagnosed vaginal bleeding, untreated endometrial hyperplasia, current or past arterial venous thromboembolic diseases, untreated hypertension, even active liver disease, and most important again is the porphyria cutanea tarda. So, as the madam has rightly said, right woman, right hormonal therapy, right age, right dose, and right route. These are the things. If you look only, then you can select the right patient and you can select the right dose. So, the woman age at the initiation is the most important part in the terms of the treatment outcomes, and the indication is age less than 60 years within 10 years of the onset of menopause, and less favorable will be age more than 10 years or the 10 years more than 10 years from the onset of the menopause. So the various guidelines, whether you talk about Indian, Australian, NICE, IMS, or Korean guidelines, they suggest how to use and how to manage the menopausal hot flashes. First of all, most important part is you have to assess the severity of hot flashes. Mild, mild means there is no interference with the daily activity. Just that you do the behavioral therapy in the form of heat-friendly clothings, use of fans, lowering of room temperatures, avoid triggers such as alcohol, spicy foods. If the patient is obese, cut down the body weight. If you are smoking, then you have to stop the smoking. Moderate to severe means it interferes with your daily activities. And if the hot flashes happen during night time, only the daytime the patient is okay, you use only the gabapentin. If there is a good response with the gabapentin, you continue to go with the gabapentin. But if there is no response, then you have to start with the hormonal replacement therapy, which could be either in the form of transdermal or oral estrogen plus minus micronized progesterone, depending upon the availability of the depending whether the uterus is intact or it is not there. If HRT is contraindicated or the patient does not want HRT, then other options which left with us is your SSRIs or SNRIs. If there is no response, the response is very poor, you can consider switching from one SSRI to the another one, or you can within the same class, or you can start with the alternative therapies as we have already discussed. If HRT there is a good response, then you can gradual taper after 1 to 2 years. If there is a recurrence, then you can reconsider the reintroduction of HRT, or you can consider the other SSRI or SNRIs. The same, this is again the flow chart by the Indian guidelines. They have got a list of contraindications like the established cardiovascular disease, previous personal history of venous thrombolism, SLE, diabetes with end stage organ disease, active endometrial or gynecological hormonal dependent cancers, active breast cancer, high risk of breast cancers, even severe active liver disease with impaired or abnormal liver functions, known or suspected pregnancies, all these things which we have to rule out before you think you want to start the patient on the HRT. And like this patient has got a hypertriglyceridemia, and the Indian guidelines, they have given a slightly caution about in those patients who has got a hypertriglyceridemia, active gallbladder disease, there is a moderate risk of CVD. All in these patients, if you want to start the HRT, better to start with the transdermal estrogen rather than with the oral estrogen. Now the question is, for how long we have to continue the HRT? Nowadays they say you continue even for 5 years or till the female attains the age of 60 years. If after the 2 years of therapy there are not much of symptoms, as the madam has rightly said, you slowly taper off the doses over the period of 6 months to 1 year, and then you can stop your HRTs. And we have got evidence that the MHT therapy in the postmenopausal osteoporosis is 2020. They said MHT is most effective for the prevention of postmenopausal osteoporosis. And when prescribing solely for the prevention of postmenopausal osteoporosis therapy, who had got high risk for osteoporosis, when non-estrogen medications are not considered to be appropriate. So we have got the evidences with us. It is not only the symptomatology treatment of vasomotor symptoms for the management, it takes care of your bones also. So about one or two lines about the tibolone. Tibolone not used much nowadays because it increases the risk of the stroke, but postmenopausal females with acute climacteric syndromes who have got lower sexual appetite or sexual dysfunction, mood swings, you can transfer from MHT to the tibolone. It decreases your mastalgia or the breast tension and increase the breast density, which needs to repeat the mammography. So these are the guidelines, but we are not using tibolones. They said it has to be given if the patient does not want MHT. So just one word about the SERMs. This benzodoxifene, it improves the BMD and reduces the risk of fractures. These SERMs are nothing, but they are, you can say, both estrogenic and anti-estrogenic effect. Their estrogenic effect is seen on the bones, and there is no effect of SERMs on the breast tissue, and anti-estrogenic effects is seen on the uterus. It improves your BMD and reduces the risk of fractures, improves the vasomotor symptoms and vulvovaginal atrophy, and there is no risk of CA breast. Though these are not much available in India, but the combination of SERMs with the estrogens can be one of the option if the patient does not want MHT. So to end my presentation, the take home message is MHT is the most effective treatment for the vasomotor symptoms. Benefits outweigh the risk in most females whose age is less than 60 years and less than 10 years post menopause. You have to individualize the therapy. Clinical factors and patient preferences should be taken into consideration. The right dose, right person, right route, most important part. And we have to screen for cardiovascular risk factors, and we have to look for the breast cancer risk prior to start with the therapy. So do not let her suffer in silence. It's not the fate of her life. Let's help her out. So thanks, all one, for the